Hi, I'm Kelly and welcome to Kapowski Reads. I'm here to talk about Read Christie, and this year, like last year and the year before, I took part in Read Christie, which basically means I read one Agatha Christie book every month which meets a theme, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I have read more than 12 Agatha Christie books this year, but I'm only going to be ranking the 12 that I read as part of the official Read Christie challenge. It's not challenging for me to pick up 12 Agatha Christie books, but it was fun having a set theme to pick from. So I really enjoyed that. That's something I like from this challenge. So maybe, yeah, that does make it challenging. So I've got my hot chocolate in my Poirot cup. I was going to have coffee, but I have a really bad headache. And I think that is because all I drank today is coffee. So probably should have had some water, but instead I have hot chocolate and ibuprofen. That's sensible, right? As is tradition, in that I did it once last year, therefore that's a tradition, that's how they start. I am going to go from my least favourite up to my favourite, because that seems like that made sense. My least favourite of the Read Christie books this year was the October pick, which was for a book with multiple settings. And that book was Marple, 12 New Cases. I've got feelings about this book before I even get into the content of the book. I couldn't review this book as an Agatha Christie book because it's not an Agatha Christie book. It is an homage. The authors took a beloved character and made their own story. So I have to view it as an homage to Agatha Christie. I always find it really difficult to rate short story collections. This one was so difficult for me to rate. I think I ended up giving it like 2.75 or 2.5, 3, something like that. It was a very middling rating because there were some stories I absolutely loved. So this had a whole lot of like very popular authors, some of whom I'd never read from before, and now I would like to. So basically there were maybe 3 stories that I loved, and then the majority of the stories were kind of middling, and it kind of felt a little bit like it was very clear which authors had and hadn't read a Miss Marple story before, because some of them just didn't get the character other than like the surface level blue eyes and likes knitting. There were some stories that I hated, like actually hated. The final story in this book by Leigh Bardugo, I wanted to punt the book across the room, but it's a very chunky hardback. I wasn't throwing that, I would have done some damage. So yeah, I hated the last story. Made me so angry. And it was just so far from the character, that the beloved character. Jane Marple would never. So enough of my ranting. The next book was After the Funeral, which was the March pick, a book written abroad. I did like this book. I mean, I liked all of the other this book and all of the rest of the books I liked. This is a Poirot book. I really enjoyed Poirot, but I really enjoyed the characters in this book too. They were somewhat over the top, very interesting to read about. So it was a good one. It was a very enjoyable read. The next one was Destination Unknown, which was the pick for August, set in a hot climate. This book was a very different style of book to the murder mystery that I have come to love by Agatha Christie. I'd never read this book before, as far as I'm aware. It was more of a sort of espionage spy kind of story, which is not my usual thing. I find, on the whole, books that are focused on spies and secret agents really boring. Really boring. But I didn't find this boring. I found this very exciting. There were some very strange moments in this book. It was an enjoyable book, but it was very odd, and it just didn't feel like an Agatha Christie book. Probably because it wasn't so much a murder mystery, it was a secret agent kind of thing. But I'm glad I read it, and I did have a good time with it. Next was the September pick, a book with a female adventurer. So I went with They Came to Baghdad, and I did really enjoy the female adventurer. I liked that there was a female character who was, you know, going across the globe seeking adventure. I found that to be really exciting, especially with the time period where this book took place. I thought it was fun and it was exciting. It was a very exciting book. Next one was a book that takes place on holiday, and I went with the July pick, which was At Bertram's Hotel, which is a Marple. And this is a more sort of a locked room kind of mystery, because all of the events take place at Bertram's Hotel, which is a hotel that's kind of set in the past. It appeals to a very certain kind of customer because they haven't modernized. That's pretty much what Marple enjoyed about it, the fact that she had been there before and it had not changed since. And that was on purpose. I love that Marple just happened to be there when all of these things were taking place, and she, again, everybody doubts her because she's a knitting wee old lady, but she knows what she's doing. And I thought that was really enjoyable, and this was a good one. There are a lot of helicopters that keep flying over, which is what happens when you live in a coastal city near the sea, where people go offshore and, you know, emergency services and things. So the editing of this will be pretty jumpy. I apologize. I'm just trying to edit out all of the whirring of the helicopters. So there's that. Usually my editing is jumpy because I'm coughing. So it's nice to mix things up a bit. Anyway, At Bertram's Hotel, very exciting. I loved the setting of this. It was cozy, and I just really enjoyed trying to figure out what was going on. There were a couple of things happening at once, and it was one of those ones where you're trying to work out what is relevant to which case, so it was enjoyable. Next up was the January pick, and that was a book inspired by Agatha Christie's travelling, The Man in the Brown Suit. And this was an early Agatha Christie, and I think that you can really tell the early Agatha Christie's by either looking at the date they were originally published, or by the romance element, because I feel like a lot of her earlier books really do shoehorn in that romance, which I don't need, but sometimes I quite like. And I enjoyed this. It had a case of mistaken identity, it had a female protagonist, and it had some jet-setting elements, of course. And I really did find that this book kept me guessing. And I had read this before, but I believe I've only read this one once, and that was a really long time ago. So it was nice to sort of get reunited with it, and it was fun and it was exciting. So I had a good time with this one also. Next was the November pick, which was a book featuring a train. And I went with 450 from Paddington, because, well, partly because I have this gorgeous hardback, and I've not read this particular copy, and also partly because I haven't read this book in a really long time, so I just was really looking forward to having a reread. What I love about this book is the eccentric family. There's a family, very well-to-do and very dysfunctional. I love a wealthy, dysfunctional family in a murder mystery. It's a classic. I love that this book involves not one, but two older ladies saving the day. There's a younger lady also saving the day, but I did enjoy having Marple and her friend basically investigating a crime. And they were both older ladies, and nobody really gave them the time of day, but oh, look, they solved the case. Who could have seen this coming? Anybody who knows Marple and listens to her, they could have seen it coming. But I really liked that. And I liked that there was a bunch of kind of maybe red herrings, just little truths being revealed. And again, layers in this book. I loved that there were multiple things going on. Were they all relevant? That's what I like. That's why Agatha Christie books are so good, because they give you loads of information and you kind of need to sift through it to get bits that are relevant to this case, but some are relevant to this case, and all good. Next was the pick for April, a book featuring adventure. Why didn't they ask Evans? This is one of the sort of standalone books that doesn't feature Poirot, Marple, any of the detectives or inspectors that we know and love. Instead, we've got Bobby and his friend Frankie. I loved the dynamic between Bobby and Frankie. Bobby needed Frankie to just keep him motivated and going, and I thought this book was so exciting and so unexpected. The ending of this book is absolutely fantastic. So exciting. I really liked this. I found that I was just sort of hooked. And again, I've read this book before, but I hadn't read it in a long time, so I was a bit fuzzy on the specifics. So I really enjoyed just reuniting with this book, and it was a wild ride. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It's only because the other books were so good that there were only little bits in it. Otherwise, this book would have been much higher. And now all of the rest of the books were 5 stars. So I'm sure you can imagine just how tricky it was for me to separate them. Next is June, which is a book featuring archaeology. Agatha Christie's second husband was an archaeologist, and she spent a lot of time away on dig sites and really drew inspiration from her time at the sites. And that pick was Murder in Mesopotamia. This is one of those fun ones where Poirot goes off somewhere hot and hates life because it's too hot. And as somebody who hates the heat, I relate to that. I relate to that entirely. I do not enjoy the heat either, Poirot. That's pretty much where our similarities end. I am less good at solving crime, I think. I loved the way that the characters were not quite what they seemed in this book, and everybody just seemed so suspicious. There were lots of things going on, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. There was quite a large cast of characters as well, but they actually all served a purpose, and they were all interesting and important in their own way to the stories. So I really enjoyed that. I like when there are lots of characters that you need the many characters rather than just have them. And in this book, it was an ensemble cast and they all served their purpose. I felt that this book was so tense, just waiting to find out what was going to happen next, because it just felt like anything could happen and that anybody could be next and that everyone was, in danger. Plus, Poirot on holiday, always enjoyable. The next pick was for May, which was a book set in Europe. And I went with Murder on the Links, which takes place in France and involves a golf course. This really was, this was fun. This was exciting and this was thrilling. There were some, again, overlapping cases and clues just coming out of nowhere that seemed maybe not relevant at all. There was mistaken identity and there was a romance, which I did enjoy. I really liked the romance in this book. I was kept guessing in this book, and this involved a very enjoyable bit at the end where, no spoilers, but Poirot does that thing where he kind of engineers a confession, which I don't know if that's frowned upon in law, but he almost kind of sets the baddies up and they reveal everything themselves. And that's what I really like. I really enjoy it sometimes when he doesn't have to bring out the confession. The people get caught themselves because they're just being too bold. I also thought that the Cinderella storyline was lovely. It was lovely. It was a romance storyline that I didn't need, but I didn't dislike it. I very much liked it. The next two were two of my favourite Agatha Christie books. I have posted a video with my top 5 Agatha Christie books, always subject to change. Usually it's the same 5 books, just the order kind of mixes about depending on what the heart wants at that time. But these next 2 are in that list. I will pop a link in the description if anybody wants to know my favourite Agatha Christie books for whatever reason. I'll put it there. My second favourite Agatha Christie book of the year was the February pick, which was a book featuring travel and romance, and I went for Death on the Nile. And again, gorgeous, gorgeous hardback cover. So pretty. This involves Poirot on holiday again. He lives a charmed life. He is off on a cruise down the Nile, and that cruise is somewhat soured by the appearance of a newlywed married couple. Of course they're married if they're newlyweds. Didn't need to specify that, but here we are. And who should join them on that cruise but the jilted ex-fiance. And it turns out that it is her ex-best friend, ex-fiance, have gotten married. And you know what? She is not okay with that. And there's a little bit of me that is kind of rooting for her. Like, kind of rooting for Jacqueline. I mean, what she's doing is not healthy. But you know, sometimes a jilted lover is an enjoyable story. And halfway through the book, Lynette ends up dead. But it's not just Jacqueline who's looking guilty. Turns out there's a whole cruise boat full of suspects. And who's on that cruise? Poirot. He's on holiday. And he ends up looking into the murder. And so many revelations. And it's such a clever, clever book where it really could be anybody. And the reveal, there's a reason this is one of my favourite Agatha Christie books. It's excellent. It's truly, truly excellent. But do you know what's more excellent? My number 1 pick. And that was the December pick, which was a book featuring jewels. And I could not have a December without reading Hercule Poirot's Christmas. This is, again, one of my favourite Agatha Christie books, and I read this every year, along with The Adventure of the Christmas Pudding, which is a short story collection. This is a locked room mystery. Turns out, that's pretty much what I love. Death on the Nile, also a locked room mystery. The room being a boat. This book features the Lee family. Simeon Lee made his money in diamonds. Tells you everything you need to know about him just from that. He's not a nice guy, and he likes to cause chaos, which I do admire in a book. And he invites some estranged family members and Poirot for Christmas, and he does not survive to Christmas. But lucky for him, Poirot is there, and Poirot was invited because Simeon Lee, the victim, felt like somebody was after him. And he wasn't wrong. So Poirot's there and gets involved in the case. And again, dysfunctional family. Dysfunctional, wealthy family. I love a dysfunctional, wealthy family and a locked room mystery. These are things I enjoy. And these are things I get from this book. And the jewels are the diamonds. And it just, again, everybody looks suspicious. Nobody has an alibi. And it's just such a thrilling book. And it really could have been any of the cast of characters who did it. So it's really enjoyable joining Poirot to try and find out who it was. I know who it was, and I knew why they did it. Because I read this book every year. But every year I'm still amazed at how well written it is, because you really just don't see it coming. I mean, you might. I don't. And I've read this book at least 12 times. And I still, every time I'm like, you're so smart. Because I'm looking for the clues, and the clues are there, but it's like Cluedo, where the clues are there, but there's all these other clues, and you have to just try and work out what it is that is relevant. And then ultimately guess when you don't have all of the facts. So this was my favourite Agatha Christie book of 2022. And if you've read any Agatha Christie books this year, I would love to know what your favourites were. And if you haven't read any Agatha Christie books, oh, have I got recommendations for you? Like this, but also in the video that I will link below. So thank you for watching. Yeah, that's me. Thanks for watching.